I would love to welcome Sarah Pagura to the All About Breastfeeding show. She is one of the co-founders of a business name that I'm really attracted to. And if anybody's listened to my opening, they already know I have a sense of humor when it comes to breastfeeding. The name of her business is Tit for Tot, and they are sticker packs for breastfeeding moms and for those of us who support them. So my listeners already know that I am not breastfeeding babies any longer, but I am in the business of helping moms with breastfeeding. And I'm bored with the fact that there's none or one now breastfeeding sticker that I could use. And so when I found out about Tit for Tots, I checked into it and I am loving it. I'm using it in my emails and I'm using it on my texts and I'm using it in Instagram, which is a lot of fun. So, Sarah is one of the co founders, and I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more formally, a little bit about her background, and then we are going to have a wonderful opportunity to talk about her breastfeeding experience. She has breastfed two babies and is very pregnant with her third. So, welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today. First off, thank you for the kind shout out for Tit for Tot. We really appreciate your support in using our breastfeeding stickers. We're a new company and we're excited to be getting the word out about our product, and we love that you're using it and sharing it with other breastfeeding moms. I am a mom of two wonderful little boys, and I've got a third on the way. I am I've always been a working mom. I am a video producer / content creator by trade. I worked in broadcast for a number of years in the Chicago area, and a few years ago I relocated back home to the Cleveland area and have been working more in corporate production. And this past year, my dear friend and I kind of started Tit for Tot, not quite on a whim, but it's a shared kind of passion project. I'm excited to be here today to share my experience as a breastfeeding mom.
Great. We are going to get into your business after we talk about some fun breastfeeding stuff. What I'd like to know is when you were pregnant the first time, did you think a lot about breastfeeding? Did you plan on breastfeeding? Was it something that was just kind of like, well, I'll give it a try and I'll see how it goes? Or was it something that you were very, very passionate about at that point and your personality was to take every class, watch every video, read every book, attend meetings before you had your baby? Tell us where your mindset was at that point.
You know, it's funny because professionally, I think I'm kind of a type A personality where I do need to I need to seek out and absorb all the information available. But I wasn't like that with breastfeeding. For me, I knew I was lucky to be around a lot of other colleagues who were having babies at the time. And there was just something, I don't know, I just kind of bought into the idea of it. I think number one, I really didn't like the idea of having to schlep around bottles and formula, like stuff to make. I liked the idea of the portability of breastfeeding. I also very much liked the idea of it being, specifically, our bodies are creating this perfect food for our babies, and why not? I don't know. So there was that aspect of it didn't take much convincing for me. It seemed like the right thing. So I kind of always, throughout my pregnancy, just always assumed that I would do it. The thing I didn't realize, and I probably, if I had taken more classes or read more, I was not anticipating how difficult it would be to get established. That's what came as a gigantic surprise to me. And I think part of that was probably could have read more or found out a little bit more. But I also just I don't come from a family of breastfeeders. I do have one older sister who breastfed. However, she's about 16 years older than me. So she was pretty far removed from her breastfeeding experience. Yeah, I think had I reached out and gained a little bit more information on the front end, that would have been helpful. I just thought it would, you make a decision to do it and, you have your baby and then you just do it. And that was not the case with my first son. We had some struggles.
Well, if it makes you feel any better from doing this show, even before I had this show, I was been a childbirth educator, birth doula, and et cetera. And your thought process is probably where about 85% of the mothers are about
Good.
just expecting it to work, maybe thinking you might have a few challenges, but being totally blown away when we're actually doing the whole breastfeeding thing and having no idea all of the little things that go on that we realize it would have been nice to know. Was there any discussion with your husband about breastfeeding? Did he have any real thoughts about it, or was he the kind of person who was like, "Hey, it's up to you"?
I'm very lucky that I have a very supportive and understanding husband. And I think he felt like if I was making a decision to breastfeed, it was a good decision and he was going to support it. So he has always, from the get-go, been 100% supportive. He's never once, encouraged me to quit. He's always been a major support, which I so appreciate.
Did he express from his own self that, wow, there's a whole lot more to this than I ever even thought?
Well, I think like a lot of parents, first time parents, we were both just completely overwhelmed by how little we knew. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My husband's the youngest of 3. So we grew up being around nieces and nephews, but not, you know, not being fully responsible for them. So I think we went into it with a little bit of hubris, thinking like, oh, this, we'll be fine. Just the first week, the first month, as you're, making that transition to parents is really tricky. And so I think he didn't put so much weight on the fact that the breastfeeding wasn't going smooth. It was more of the whole experience of like, oh, we got to figure out how to do all this stuff.
The word that is typically used is overwhelmed. And for many of us, like I babysat a lot, so I was around a lot of kids. And I also went into it thinking I could do this. I sometimes babysit for 5 kids at a time. But like you, the realization that, well, I wasn't the one pregnant with those kids. I didn't give birth to those kids. I'm not feeding those kids. I'm not sleep deprived. And I'm not fully responsible. So this whole bringing home a baby into the home and being responsible for it and all the things that we weren't really a part of, like you said, nieces, nephews, but you weren't intimately a part of all that very newness stuff, right? And it wasn't your baby. You weren't the same emotional connection, and you weren't incredibly sleep deprived and had this anxiety about being responsible for everything for this new little life. If you're like me and other people who did have the ability and the privilege and we just hung out with other family members, there were other young kids in the family. And so when we go to have our own children, we're different than some people who say, I've never even held a baby. I've never even babysat. I have no idea about this thing, having kids. But you have a certain comfort level because you've been around the kids a lot because they've been in your own family and younger siblings and nieces and nephews. So I think if you're like me, you kind of go into it thinking that much more relaxed, like I can do this. But the reality, I realized after I had my first baby, I sat and I thought about it. I'm like, well, those other kids that I babysat for, I didn't babysit in the first 3 months. I wasn't pregnant with them. I didn't give birth. I wasn't losing sleep and I wasn't breastfeeding them. And these are all the things that are getting me very anxious and overwhelmed now. So it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks, right?
Yeah. Thinking back on, and granted, my oldest son is he's 7.5. So I'm quite far removed from this experience, but thinking back on it, I guess I always just thought you'd figure it out after a few days. It didn't occur to me, like we ended up discovering, and we didn't discover this quickly. We had a couple issues at play that really, like I really needed the help of a lactation consultant. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that I went from being on the verge of quitting to having a completely transformative experience. And then I went on to successfully breastfeed for 2 years. So the help of of the lactation consultant, in my experience, was absolutely the key to our success.
So I want to hear a little bit about what happened before that. So you have your first baby. Was he born full term and everything went well with the birth?
He was born full term. He was 6 pounds, which to me felt like he was he was small. He had no health concerns other than they wanted him to supplement immediately, because even though we were in a hospital that was very supportive of breastfeeding, they felt like they didn't want him losing a whole lot of weight in the hospital. But we had a latch issue. We couldn't latch, and I think it was ultimately a combination of his size and the shapes of my nipples at that time. So there was a lot of effort in the hospital provided by the nurses to get him to latch. But I think what happened in the hospital didn't exactly set me up for success at home, because it was a little more complicated that I could handle. I don't know what the systems were called, but it was like I was doing a combination of pumping and but also trying to get him to nurse at the breast. But then they were doing some running some tubing down across my shoulder and down my chest. And it just was never something that I could replicate on my own. So with the assistance of the nurses in the hospital, we were making a little bit of headway. But once I went home, I couldn't replicate it.
When you went home, just go home with a baby and a boob, you went home with information or the parts to pumping, maybe the tubing stuff, issues with latch. So here you are just a couple of days into it. And I think you said that there's just way more stuff than you had ever anticipated. And
and I was recovering from a C-section too, which was just as part of it. But, it was, I think either way, whether you're having a vaginal or C-section, you're recovering. So it was a lot. And I think the first couple days at home were really challenging because we had a hard time keeping the baby happy. He seemed very upset. The family members that I had there to help us definitely had our best intentions in mind, but they didn't have any breastfeeding experience. So they felt like, and probably rightfully so, he was mad because he wasn't getting enough milk. Rather than, I think their position was more, let's get this baby fed. We don't want this 6-pound baby losing any more weight. So there was more of a focus on getting him fed than than trying to establish like a successful breastfeeding pattern. That was really frustrating. But I'm kind of stubborn. I think anyone that knows me well will tell you that. And when I have my mind set on something, it's, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And so I had just one tearful day where I left messages on like 10 different lactation consultants' cell phones, and it was just like whoever, could get back to me first, I needed them to come over. And I can't remember the lovely lady's name, but I reached this lady on a Sunday. She came over, and within just a few minutes of meeting with me, she's like, "You need a nipple shield." She's like, "He just can't latch. He needs a little something else." And it was like that little insight of like, you need this extra tool. You don't let's get rid of this complicated stuff because it's not working. You're having trouble with that. This will be much easier. And she gave me mentioned you're not going to be using this forever, and there will be some, cons to using it. But, I think ultimately this will be a good thing. And it immediately shifted the entire experience. And so I'm forever grateful to that lactation consultant.
I'm curious, was your initial reaction though, oh my goodness, something else you're going to tell me to use and to do?
No, because when she showed me what it was and when she told me what I needed to do with it, it was like, oh, well, I can do that. That's easy. Okay, that's fine. And he was immediately able to latch. It was crazy, the difference it made.
cry when he latched on?
I don't remember that I cried then. I remember I had cried a lot leading up to that moment. It had been a tearful couple of days trying to figure that out. And I just remember leaving all of these messages for lactation consultants where I was definitely crying in the messages. So I don't remember. I think I was okay. I was all cried out at that point.
There's enough times when I'm with moms and whatever adjustments we make, whatever it is we do, if we can get her baby breastfeeding after days and nights of struggles and all those tears and everything before, then frequently they're crying. And I'm always careful to ask, am I doing anything wrong? Is it hurting? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's happy tears because he just
Yeah.
done that. He's 9 days old and he's never latched on. And, they've never sat with their baby relaxed at the breast that's actually feeding. Everything has been so much finagling and so much work and so many things that try to
Yeah.
pay attention. And for the first time they can, I have them just I put my hands on their shoulders and just tell them to relax. And it's the first time that be in the moment and actually have their baby breastfeeding.
Yeah, and I have to say that was the beginning. From that point on, it really was the beginning of a joyful breastfeeding journey. I mean, both my son and I think we enjoyed the quiet time together, the bonding time. It made, for me as a new mom, it made getting out of the house and just going and, having some semblance of like, oh, we can still get up and go, a reality. I don't know. We really enjoyed it.
I'm so grateful for moms who are able to figure it out. And in this case, sometimes we do it on our own. Sometimes we have a friend help us. In this case, it was a lovely lactation consultant who helped you. Was she ever able to tell you why your baby may have had problems initially latching onto the bare breast?
Yes, she felt like when she examined my nipples that they were inverted. So if my memory serves me, it's like they need to pull out a little bit. So like he just didn't have enough to latch onto. And also because she thought another potential factor in it was his size. She felt like as he gets bigger, she said, as he gets bigger and he's easier for you to hold and his mouth, his jaw gets stronger, he'll be better at this. And she was right. We really, I think I used the nipple shield for maybe a month, and then we started weaning from the nipple shield, and then went right straight to the breast, which had its difficulties. There was the downside to that was there was. I feel like I remember it feeling like the first few seconds of nursing felt like glass was being pulled out of your nipple. But that didn't last very long. But it was definitely something like she warned me about, like, oh, it's you're not going to want to use these forever because it affects how. Correct me if I'm not remembering this right. Does it slow down the rate of milk that they're able to pull out? There's something. I thought she said something like that.
Well, there's a few things that each mom is different. So I would individualize it for her specific situation. But the first thing that I just want to say for some people who are listening to the show who may not know what a nipple shield is, it is basically like a silicone teeth. It's shaped as a nipple, and I love when people say it is just like mom's nipple. Well, we have inverted nipples, flat nipples, big nipples, small nipples, wide nipples, long nipples. So it's never just like mom's because we can't replicate that. But it has a teeth that it kind of sticks out a little bit. And we use them for various purposes. And in your case, it seems that it enabled your baby to literally have something to latch onto. Because when the nipple
Yeah.
is inverted, it's hard to get that nipple everted and far back in your baby's mouth. And so they're just kind of sliding off, sliding off, sliding off. So in that instance, it seems like it helped with the latch on. And I don't know what your particular situation is, but you experience the pros. The pros is, oh my goodness, my baby has not latched on and cannot breastfeed, to a 180. wow, look, my
Completely. Yeah.
and then, the sun is shining and the birds are singing in your house now because you've been looking forward to breastfeeding. You assumed you weren't going to have any issues, and then you leave the hospital with all of this stuff, and then you're just, thrown into a world that you just never expected, having to do with all these different issues that you're having with breastfeeding. Then you have one cute little nipple shield that makes a huge difference. So we're very grateful for it. At the same time, for some moms, there are some cons. And particular when you're in the business of the first 6 weeks of building a supply, for some mothers, the attachment to the breast and the messages that your breasts get are somewhat dull because we're looking for a baby to compress the breast tissue and then use their tongue to help get the milk out, basically. I'm simplifying it, but frequently the nipple shield is missing that deeper connection to the breast. And so,
Hmm.
less stimulation, it may hinder the volume of milk that you're building over the first 6 weeks while using it. For some moms, they're just making a lot of milk anyway, despite any possible lack of stimulation or a poor latch that the baby might even have on the nipple shield. And you're still just building. But because I don't know with each individual mom that I'm working with, unless she's got a ton of milk, enough for 5 other babies on the block, I am then having her do some pumping after some nipple shield feedings so that her breast gets additional stimulation in addition to what the baby's doing. So, one of the cons is there may be less stimulation to the breast tissue and a problem increasing your supply the same way a baby at the bare breast would do. And the other is a baby getting used to the nipple shield and having a real difficult time weaning the baby off or just not being able to do that at all. However, most mothers, when I'm talking to them about it, even if it's because some have heard, oh, I don't really want to use that nipple shield because I've heard that it lowers your supply or I can't get my baby off of it. And when we've really exhausted all other efforts, if this is how we can get your baby to latch on and breastfeed and both of you to relax and start enjoying breastfeeding, rather than so much being different than breastfeeding, sitting a baby up and giving them a bottle, it's far better to have them at the breast, connected to you. And the one thing that's different about breastfeeding is that they're latching onto a nipple shield. But if they're only getting a bottle, then everything is different. Like there's just nothing about breastfeeding that's happening. And if you're very frustrated with the tubing, an SNS or whatever feeding device you're using, if that's frustrating and that's not working. So I often come to the point with moms is like, we cannot have your baby breastfeeding and keep doing this struggle, or we can have your baby breastfeeding using the shield, keep up your supply with pumping, and deal with the weaning as, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah. And I just want to make the point of, I think that all of the input that we got from both our nurses in the hospital and family, even if they weren't, in tune with breastfeeding, I think it was all well intentioned. And I think you really do have to trust your instincts about, as a new mom, even if you feel like you don't know a whole lot about anything, like, this isn't working for me, and explore other options. I was glad that I was able to keep my head on straight enough to have that, separate consultation and to find another solution, because I really wanted it to work. And I feel like that's a lot of, I hear from a lot of friends and other mommy associates that, and this is a big part of why we created Tit for Tot, is having support, even if it's just someone saying, you know what, the first month is going to be hard. It's going to get easier. If you can keep like those positive thoughts in your head, it just makes a world of difference.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because I do find that often, sometimes there's tension in the household, sometimes there's not. But the reality is that most of the people who are staying with you, helping you, everyone has the best of intention. They're sitting a little bit on the sidelines watching you struggle and watching a baby that's clearly not getting fed. Sometimes they could be a little bit more objective than the new mother can. And what everybody really wants is to have a well-fed baby. Now, the issue is
Yes.
you have people who want a well-fed baby and are looking to make sure your baby's well-fed while you're in the business of getting help with breastfeeding, and then others who are just ready to steer you away from breastfeeding, or moms who are just so overwhelmed thinking it's an all or nothing. So I like to have
Yeah.
a plan where we're getting babies well fed while we're working on the breastfeeding.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tricky.
So we're
Definitely
going back
tricky.
quite a few years, but is there anything, any one thing in particular you remember about weaning him from the nipple shield that was difficult for you?
My kind of test for myself was I wanted to be able to breastfeed when we were out so that I didn't have to constantly go home. And I just remember like sitting on a park bench, like, with my hand under my shirt, trying to get that nipple shield on and just like having people walk by and look at me strange, like, what is she doing? So I was relieved when that part was over. Uh, but I think, I don't know how long it went on. I don't think it was too long, but the pain that I mentioned before of when we started weaning off the nipple shield, that few first seconds of nursing where it just felt like an excruciating pain emanating from your breast. I don't remember that fondly, but I just remember like gritting my teeth and kind of getting through it. And it passed. It definitely passed. And then I remember a few days into it, it was done. I was like, oh, okay, great. That's over. I think for me, a big part of what I enjoyed about breastfeeding my first son, I had a couple of really good friends who I very much shared the journey with. One friend was like a brand new mom friend. It was a girl that I randomly met in my neighborhood one day while I was out to lunch with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law heard a baby crying and she was like, oh, is there another baby in the restaurant? And she went, and being the very social person she is, she went over and found this other young mom who was just having lunch by herself with her 6-week-old baby. And she went and introduced herself, and then she introduced us and basically told us we should be friends. And I'm so grateful that she did this because this other mom and I became very close friends. We lived 2 streets apart, and our babies were like 6 weeks apart. And she was also nursing, and we had a lot of things just in common in terms of how we were approaching motherhood and nursing. And we became walking buddies, and our babies played together. We were both breastfeeding, and she was someone that I could talk to very candidly about anything that was going good or bad. So that was a really good friendship.
Your mother
And then
was a smart person because she knew that if she hooked you up with even one mother, that could
yeah,
literally change your new motherhood life.
it was awesome. It was so great. It's funny when this friend and I talk about it. It was like, I mean, we probably had passed on the sidewalk at some point, and just I don't know how we could not have, because after that it was like I always saw her. Like we would run into each other every day if we didn't have plans. But yeah, I'm grateful for my mother-in-law for that.
Is she someone who you wound up partnering with tit for tots?
No, that's a separate friend. Yeah. So
Okay.
my other dear friend, Tessa, who is my partner in Tit for Tot, is also like my forever breastfeeding buddy. She and I have been friends for going on 20 years, and just happen to have 2 of our kids are basically the exact same age. They're about a week apart. So her oldest son and my oldest son, her third and my second, are very close in age. So we had the privilege of going through 2 very long breastfeeding journeys together. And even though we lived in different states, we were in constant contact by phone. And because we had such a close friendship beforehand, there was really no topic that I felt uncomfortable talking to her about. And likewise, she would share with me. It was really helpful, I should say, to have a person that I could share all of the funny and the hairy and the weird things that happen when you're a breastfeeding mom, because I think that's another thing that you're not fully prepared for. I think from my experience, because I wasn't around a lot of breastfeeding women, I had this notion of like, oh, this is what earthy moms do. This is, it's kind of cool, laid back thing. But I didn't realize like how much humor was involved in it and how much like how you would find yourselves in these kind of humiliating scenarios sometimes when you're, trying to unclog a milk duct. And I was grateful to have a close friend that I could completely confide in and we could laugh about things.
It took me a while to find even other friends who had new babies, but when that happened,
Yeah.
my daughter was 6 months old, and I was a crazy person before then, but at 6 months, things shifted for the better, and all that was great. But I still didn't have anybody who was breastfeeding, so I definitely missed out on being able to talk to someone about all of the lovely things and not so lovely things, and that go on with a breastfeeding mother in her life. So when you start to tell that story about your mother-in-law doing that, I was like, man, she's a smart lady. What a great thing she did for you.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it was just so awesome that she did that. I think the other part of it too is I think you have to take ownership of like knowing who you are as a person. Are you the kind of person who will go to a support group? Because not everybody's into that. Or if you, especially if you have like friends who are going through it, you might not think that you need to do that. But for some people who don't have other breastfeeding women around them, those could be like really key opportunities for you to make strong connections with other women that, maybe you're not going to be lifelong friends, but this is a small time in your life where you could be leaning on each other in a way that's really meaningful.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't know that I knew that I was that kind of person or not, but it certainly wasn't on my radar. But I am telling you, you could probably relate to this, as can most new mothers. All of a sudden, I was like in this place of desperation for
Yeah.
new mother human contact. And I would have walked many, many miles to connect with another mother. So whether we're thinking we're that kind of person to join support groups or not, even when I meet mothers, I tell them if they say they're not, I'm like, can I encourage you to go just once?
Yeah.
Give me some feedback. So Sarah, I wanted to ask about your second baby. So I know you
Sure.
breastfed first after you got done with the nipple shield. Sounds like you had a wonderful experience. You breastfed for a couple of years, and now you have your second. Are you doing anything different going into that newborn breastfeeding experience, or now having breastfed, gone through your struggles the first time, come through the other side, breastfed for a couple of years, are you now just assuming that it's going to work, and if it doesn't, you know how to get connected to someone and you'll figure it out?
I guess going into my second or coming out of my second pregnancy, going into my second uh, breastfeeding journey, I guess I was mentally prepared for there to be a little bit of trouble. I remember maybe the last month of pregnancy as I was at home nesting and kind of getting all the baby stuff out again. I remember looking for my nipple shields and not being able to find them. I felt like that was something I needed to have in my bag in case, things didn't go right at the hospital. And I don't remember being stressed out about it, like about the idea that it might not work, because I knew that from the first experience that if we had trouble, we could figure it out. And I think that that's anything in life. You go through an experience that's difficult, you find a way to persevere, and you just have that confidence. And I think the whole experience of being a parent for the second time is just for my husband and I both, it was just so much easier because we survived the babies, everybody survived. And we just had a whole lot more knowledge than we had the first time around. So yeah, I guess I was expecting that there might be a problem, and then was pleasantly surprised when we didn't have any problems at all. Like the baby came out like a whole pound heavier than the first. So he was 7 pounds. He didn't have any problems latching.
I'm going to ask a question that I know is probably on my listeners' mind. If you're willing to share, by the time you had your second baby, did your nipples go back and invert, or were they now protruding somewhat?
We'd had a long stretch. There's a 5-year difference between my first and my second. We had experienced some secondary infertility, and really we didn't know that whether we would be able to have a second. So the fact that we were having a second just felt like such a huge blessing, and we were just so excited. I don't think they ever went back fully inverted. Yeah, breastfeeding definitely transformed them.
All right. And now you are pregnant and due very soon with your third. Do you have any other thoughts about breastfeeding, or is it pretty much the same mindset that you were in for your second baby?
So I'm just a few days shy of 38 weeks. So really we're kind of on the baby's timetable at this point. I honestly haven't even thought about until you asked me about it. I hadn't even thought about it. I guess I think I'm hopefully not making an error of being a little too confident. But I guess I'm kind of ready for anything. I haven't been looking for nipple shields, but, but I guess maybe I need to be thinking that mentally preparing myself for this could be a different situation. This is an entirely different child. But overall, I'm going into it with a very positive mindset.
Yeah, and it's funny for me to hear you say that. Like now we're talking about breastfeeding, and all of a sudden I'm making you think about, oh, I'm going to have a baby in a few weeks, and do I need to worry about breastfeeding? But the thing is, just like you said, you're confident. We don't know what to expect the first time, and sometimes we're just expecting it to work, and maybe having a little bump along the road, but no biggie. But we're just blown away with everything related to new parenting. Never mind breastfeeding. And then the second time, if it goes well, it would, I would think it would be a pretty normal reaction to really, you're busy with 2 other kids and you have a
Yeah.
lot on your plate and you're just in that space of having another baby. You assume breastfeeding is going to go fine. If it doesn't, you probably know that you can send someone to the store to get a nipple shield if you don't have one on hand. And
Yeah.
if you have a problem and that doesn't solve it, you know to contact a lactation consultant. So you are in exactly the perfect mindset I would expect you to be in.
Good. Oh, good. Good, good, good.
So things are going to be fine for you, and if not, you'll figure it out. And if you'll figure it out, and now, of course, you're very, very, very well connected to the world of breastfeeding, and I'm sure you have a lot of breastfeeding moms. And what I want you to tell me about is your new company that you started. I would love for you to share a little bit
Yeah.
about how that started and how you got the name. And obviously, for my listeners, they already know that I have a sense of humor about all things related to breastfeeding. You just need to hear the opening. And so when I heard the name of your company, I'm like, these ladies, they obviously have a great sense of humor. They're my type, and I want to get to know them a little bit better. I connected with you. I'm using your stickers. I'm having a lot of fun with them. We're going to introduce them to our audience, but let's first hear about how it all started.
Yeah. Well, thank you again and for your support. We so appreciate that you like the name and appreciate the humor of it, because I think that we all need to be able to laugh. This motherhood stuff is hard, and breastfeeding can be really hard on so many different levels. Apart from, today we've only talked about, the direct, like the mechanics being hard, but there's so many societal parts of this that make it difficult. I'm a working mom, and I've definitely had my share of experiences where it's just like, oh my gosh, I feel like everything's stacked against me in terms of being a breastfeeding success. So I appreciate that you get the humor of it. So Tit for Tot, we like to think we're a female-owned company. We kind of think of ourselves as a tech startup. We recently launched a sticker pack for iPhone users, and it basically is an app that contains a collection of emoji-like stickers that that basically communicate and illustrate the ups and downs of breastfeeding. So if you're not familiar with stickers, these are essentially emojis. So little graphic icons that you can use in your texting communications, to keep engaged with your fellow breastfeeders or those who are supporting you. We like to say that these are great ways to seek, receive, and provide support, because we feel like that is such a key element in helping moms reach their breastfeeding goals. And that's ultimately our mission. We want to help more women meet their breastfeeding goals because we know it's hard. There's a lot of different things that, that factor into whether you're having a successful breastfeeding experience. And we want to be a component that's helping push you towards your goal. So the kind of our origin story goes back to a weekend over the summer, I think it was 2017. My family was getting ready to visit Tessa's family, her home outside Boston. And in the few days leading up to our trip, I'm getting ready to fly with my husband and my two sons, and I get a clogged milk duct. And for the life of me, I could not unclog this damn milk duct. I mean, it was, and I think any breastfeeding mom knows that with every hour that passes, that thought of, oh, I'm going to get mastitis just keeps getting more present. And so I hit the 24-hour mark, and I was like really starting to get nervous because I'd never fully had mastitis before, but I knew what it could manifest as. And I didn't want to be traveling. I didn't want to be out of state and traveling and be sick like that. I feel like I'm like a white witch here doing every possible technique on myself. And, I'm dunking my boob in Epsom salt water. I'm taking a million showers, doing compression. I'm, on all fours, nursing upside down. I mean, just all this humiliating stuff. And while this is all happening, Tessa and I are texting back and forth about it. She's offering me suggestions. She's being a good support. We're laughing about it. And finally, I think I was pretty close to 48 hours, and I'd already been to the doctor and had a backup antibiotic prescription in my pocket. We got it cleared. Maybe my little dude got it cleared for me. And I remember texting her like a hooray, or like so excited. And she's texting me back like, congratulations and what relief. And it dawned on us right there, like, it would be awesome if there were some emojis that we could communicate off of. Because like, these aren't instances unique to me. These are universal breastfeeding experiences. So the next day, I flew to Boston to spend some time with Tessa and her family. And it was during this vacation that we started talking more and more about it and started brainstorming like, okay, well, so we have this universal breastfeeding experience. What else? And we just started brainstorming a list of what other topics are breastfeeding moms constantly talking about. And this list just started growing and growing. And that was really the start of our business.
I bet you it was a long list.
It was a really long list. And it's funny, like when I look back at the very first list and then I look at the list that we have now, it just keeps growing because it started off as a list of experiences that Tessa and I could, that individually we identified with. But then as we started talking to more and more moms and getting exposed to their experiences, it just seems like endless.
You probably have a list of stickers of suggestions that you're probably thinking like, how do I make a sticker for that?
Yeah, it's funny because we start thinking about ideas in terms of our creative process. We think of like ideas, but then you have to think about the context in which you're going to use them and what makes sense. So we have kind of like a little guide of questions that we ask ourselves when we're working through concepts. But yeah, it's really fun. So we started the company, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. So there was a lot of kind of pre-production work that went into it. And then about 6 months into it, we brought on a third partner. Her name's Kate, and she's a creative mastermind. She's doing all of the illustrations across the brand, and she's just like another great brain to have on in terms of the company itself too. We're a small bootstrapping female-owned company, and we're just trying to be out there supporting breastfeeding women.
So I'm going to mention just a few of my favorite stickers because I work a lot with breastfeeding moms and moms who are working or they need to pump or they want to pump. And some moms, it's hard to find the time to pump. So I love, and I talk to moms about pumping while driving. And it freaks some moms out, but once they do it once, they're like, oh, I don't know why I was so hesitant to do this. This is like the best thing ever as far as multitasking. So now when I talk to moms and I'm going back and forth with them via email after I've worked with them and they're asking about, okay, so now tell me the deal about how do I start beginning to store milk and put it aside for when I go back to work, and how do I figure out pumping at work? Well, one of my favorite stickers to use is you have a sticker of a mom pumping and driving. So that one is being well used by me. Then
All right.
I know I love that one. It's just great to be able to, share that with a mom. And then I posted a few on Instagram, and one of my favorite ones is with the Statue of Liberty, and she's holding a baby.
Yeah.
She's breastfeeding, and it says, "Give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're cranky." I love that.
Yeah. We were kind of inspired when all of the issues were first coming to light around the border crossing, and there was the article about the mom. I can't remember the exact details, but there was a mom who was detained, and there was something she was harassed while she was breastfeeding, and that really just made us start thinking about that, and also the fact that we only just this past fall reached a point where you're able to breastfeed in public in all 50 states. It just seems a little bit backwards that we're only hitting that milestone right now. We're just a little bit of a nod towards that. I mean, I think ultimately, part of this effort too is to help normalize breastfeeding, because I think Tessa and I have both had this experience of kind of being in these pro breastfeeding bubbles where she lives. And when I was in Chicago, it was just very accepted and very encouraged. But it's not like that all over the country, I feel like, and probably in pockets of both of the cities that we were in. And I just, I think some of it's complicated. There's multiple factors that go into it. But I think that, we still have great strides to make in normalizing breastfeeding.
Yeah, that's a subject I am like, do not even get me started. The fact that we need to pass laws in order for a mom to feed. See, because I don't even look at it as breastfeeding. I just look at it as she's feeding her baby. So the fact that we have to pass laws just drives me insane. I'm just going to mention one other sticker that I absolutely love along that lines of breastfeeding in public. One of my favorite ones is the mom breastfeeding while she's shopping. So her baby's sitting in a shopping cart and breastfeeding as she goes. And to me, that's also like the ultimate to multitasking, especially when you have a baby that's a little bit older and they're home and you're shopping. And, I've done that quite a few times myself. So there's so much that I can relate to. And for mothers who are breastfeeding, I think this is such a great gift should be in like every mom's gift pack for before she has her baby. Get that app going, and she is going to find herself using it a lot. And what do moms do when they're breastfeeding? After you get it going good, you're on your cell phone doing whatever.
Yeah, you are a multitasking goddess.
I know.
I mean, getting stuff done, connecting with people, maybe doing a little shopping. Maybe I feel like I'm very much guilty of I almost always have my computer or my laptop or something out where I'm doing something else while I'm breastfeeding.
Yeah, and you realize that at the beginning, you realize that there is a lot of good reason why you need to sit and focus. And as a new mom, you're recovering from birth, cesarean, vaginal, and you do. But it doesn't mean that we can't continue to bond and be connected to our baby while they're breastfeeding and we're doing other stuff as they get older.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to forget to say this to your audience. So you can get Tit for Tot on Apple's App Store. So it's a very easy download for your iPhone or iPad. You can also, if you're not a breastfeeding mom, but you know someone that is or will be soon, it's also a great gift. Apple has it set up very easily so that you can buy the app and gift it to someone. We've got instructions on our website, www.tit4tot.com. We've got instructions there, or if you need help doing it, just feel free to reach out and we can help you. We're also, we love, we're such big fans of your podcast. I'm so appreciative for the opportunity to share my breastfeeding story and also to share details about our sticker pack, Tit for Tot. As just a little thank you to your audience, we're going to run a week-long sale. We'll let you announce kind of the dates for that later. But basically, your audience will have a chance to get our app at a 50% discount. Usually we're at $1.99 and we'll have it marked down to 99 cents. You can get our app on the App Store. Just search Tit for Tot. And we have fun using our stickers. And if you have ideas for new stickers you'd love to see, please know that we're a growing sticker pack. We're constantly adding to it, but we're also open to your ideas. So if you want to reach out and share some ideas, we'd love to hear from you. And just best of luck to all of you in your individual breastfeeding journey. You can do it.
That's wonderful, Sarah. I really appreciate you offering that to my audience. I'm sure everybody's going to take advantage of it. I mean, at that point, it's only 99 cents and they get to add this whole sticker pack. And for breastfeeding moms, you're going to find yourself using these stickers left and right. They're going to provide some good laughs for you, particularly during some times when things might not be going so well. You're going to take a look at especially some of the action stickers. They're really funny. So thank you so much for offering that. And I wish you a very safe birth and a healthy mom and baby.
Thank you. We so appreciate that.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.